While we are not necessarily intentionally offensive here at A Word from the Shadows, occasionally we will tell an off-color joke, accidentally use a cuss word, or be politically incorrect. You have been warned. That's right, folks. I bit a Chomos ear off in federal prison, spit it in the toilet, and then I flushed it. I did it for a number of reasons, and in the course of this video, I'm going to explain in intricate detail the difference between the federal penitentiary system as it compares to the New York State system, because those are the two systems that I have, like an intimate working knowledge of, because I was incarcerated in each of those two systems for a significant amount of time. I'd also like to introduce you to my dog, Tur, Nina Spiet. She may not be my wife and our biological daughter for a number of obvious reasons, but a big obvious reason, but we sure do love her like she is. She's my little dog, Tur. So I do definitely have a soft side. So, what's the biggest difference between these two systems? Now, I said in one of my previous videos, it's like day and night. And one of the biggest systems in like the New York State prison system at high security, or what they refer to as a max joint behind a 40-foot wall, is all the cells are one-man cells. Now, that's a pretty big thing. What that means is you don't have to get to know another person, i.e. a cellie. Because if you're in a facility on the federal level that have two-man cells in all their max joints, or what's referred to as United States penitentiaries, you will be forced to deal with another person, i.e. a cellie. And now, oftentimes, in these United States penitentiaries, you'll have lockdowns that last anywhere from a couple of hours to a couple of months, depending on the incident they're locking down for. And most of the people they're locking down have nothing to do with that incident, nor do they care in the least, at least a little bit. But you're still there, so they just lock the whole place down and do whatever investigation they do to get to the bottom of what happened. So that's one of the biggest differences. Whereas in the New York State system, with the exception of one joint called 5 Points, it's a relatively new joint, about maybe 15 years old, and they built that as a two-man cell facility. But even in that jail, they have a rec pen attached to the back of the cell, so you can get a little fresh air, kind of get away from your cellie. You can have TVs in your cells, and that's another big difference. In New York State, you don't have day rooms in maximum security facilities. If you don't have somewhere to be, if you're not at recreation, if you're not at work, school, or some other program, you're in your cell. You're locked in your cell. Unless you're on one of those honor blocks that those two dudes ended up escaping from in Clinton. Now, I've never been in Clinton, but I have been in Auburn, which is like New York State's oldest maximum security facility. I've also been in Sing Sing, which a lot of you people may have heard of, and I've been in Attica, which a lot of you guys may have heard of. Now, some of the most notorious prisons in America, most people never have heard of, and those are the United States federal penitentiaries. Okay, these places are America's worst kept secret. I mean, well, best kept, whatever, however you phrase it, but it's like, if you don't know they exist, you just wouldn't be aware of them. Where a lot of the state joints have been around for much longer, and they have a history. Okay, so what led to me biting this Chomos ear off? I'll put you down, baby, so you can go and hide under the couch. She's a real good little girl, and she's got a cool little mohawk. Her hair gets really long, and I live down here in Central Florida, so I just thought it was too hot for her, so I shave her down. I got the clippers for it, and I give her a cool little mohawk. Yay! Yeah, I love you. So they put this chomo in my cell, right? And I got no love for nobody who hurts women and kids at all. You're not, as far as I'm concerned, you're a dirtbag. Okay. But you see, the federal prison system facilitates extreme politics and extreme gangbanging. Whereas in the New York State system, you have a real incentive. Now, don't get me wrong, the New York State system's a rough and tough system, okay? You got Rikers Island, and you do have these notorious prisons, Attica, Sing Sing, etc. But the difference is this. So it's all one-man cells. So that's a huge thing right there. You don't have to, or you're not forced to live with another person that you may not like or want to live with, okay? Another thing is, in the mess hall, when you get your tray of food in the feeding line, you go through the feeding line, you get your tray of food, and you got an officer there directing you exactly where to sit. And you fill one table completely up, then you go to the next table and you sit in orderly. So if you come off the serving line, you sit in the next available seat right there at that table the officer directs you to. Okay? And that's just the way it is, and he's not there, he's there and people just go because they understand that. In the federal system, the mess hall is, the cafeteria is divided between the three main races that's going to be in a federal penitentiary. Caucasian, African American, and Mexican American, okay? So that's the way the mess hall is structured. And when you come off the feeding line, you sit anywhere in that. If I'm a white guy, I could sit like more or less any white table where there's a seat. Now, yes, you will have primarily a table that you usually sit at, but if like all the chairs are full there, you can sit in any available chair. Now, because of these elements, it facilitates extreme politics at the federal level. Because you have to live with someone, people want to know what you're all about. Okay, because like for myself, I was a bookie. I had a huge commissary, a huge, off the books, a commissary where I would procure all kind of items from the prison official commissary, and then I would make it available in the housing unit for a profit on my end, but I'm providing a valuable service at a reasonable rate that the other inmates, that prisoners that I live around appreciate. And, I take bets, and if you hit, I pay you, So I had a lot of things going on in my cell, so I don't want some just indiscriminate person, and that's what led to me biting this guy's ear off. He put up. Okay, so before I get to that story, though, I want to explain the political and really why that type of stuff is so prolific at the federal penitentiary level, where maybe in New York State, it's a little different. So because they have these two-man cells, every FCI and every U.S. penitentiary is a cell-orientated system. So when you get to the United States penitentiary level, you got guys doing all kind of whatever they're doing, and they don't want just any person in their cell seeing all their secrets. So you want to know what your celly's all about, and you need to live with someone that's like an unofficial marriage. Like, you know a lot about the way I go about doing things. You may know where my stash spots are. You may hear confidential conversations that most Joe Blows ain't going to be privy to, So you want somebody in your cell. So that leads to you wanting to do background checks on them and find out, has this guy ever cooperated with the government? Because, see, that's another huge thing. In the federal system, the number one thing that will allow you to get what they call a downward departure from the guideline range is, like Sammy the Bull, for example. The reason why he got away with all those murders is because the federal government knew he did them and said, hey, we got the evidence to get indictments on you and put you in the hole for the rest of your natural life. But if you testify on John Gotti, we won't indict you. So it'll never actually come before a court as a legitimate matter of charge and sentence. even though obviously the court, no, we have these evidence, the federal government didn't charge Sammy the Bull. Okay, they only charged him with conspiracy. Okay, so if you cooperate, if Sammy the Bull cooperates with the government, testifies on John Gotti, okay, he will only be charged with conspiracy and will receive a maximum of 5 years in prison. If he doesn't cooperate with the government and testify against John Gotti, then the federal government will indict him for the 20 or 30 murders they got him. Okay, so that's the way that works. So that's the number one thing that qualifies you for a downward departure, downward variance, cooperation with the U.S. government against other criminal defendants. I think that guy 6'9", everybody's somewhat familiar with him. So, yeah, he did something very similar, okay? I don't even know the guy's music because, like, I wouldn't even give him the time of day to listen to him. But, you know, obviously a lot of people do like him, and that might say a lot about the culture as a whole. So, I'll leave it up to your own discretion to figure out, you know, where you want to go with that. So, the federal prison system is a much more, like, especially at the penitentiary level. If you're in prison because somebody got on the stand and said, yeah, he did it, you know, you don't want somebody who did that to someone else living around you, okay? And you can see how you might have a conflict of interest there, right? So, those type of people in the federal penitentiary level, they got a big bullseye on their back, okay? And oftentimes, you know, people are pumped because it's a big bullseye, right? Another person that's going to have an extreme hard time at the United States penitentiary level is a sex offender of any kind. And, you know, if guys find out, well, you were 19 and had sex with a 16 and a 17-year-old, they might not stab you up. They just might beat the hell out of you. Now, not only in the federal prison system, because you got the United States sentencing guidelines, which that exaggerates every possible sentence that can be imposed on you, as where the state would give you 2 or 3 years for a very similar crime that you get charged under state statute for. Over here in the feds, you're looking at now, 15, 20, 25 years for a very similar crime, but because the feds took a stepped in and took jurisdiction, now they have what they call the sentencing guidelines, where basically at the top you have what they call a criminal history category. How many prior convictions do you have? And on this level, it allows them what they call a base offense level. So whatever you've been charged and indicted for, it goes to that number, and then where they meet in the middle is the number of months you're looking at. And if you plead guilty and say you're sorry and throw yourself in the mercy of the court, they'll knock 3 points off, so it'll drop, and that could be a significant drop, anywhere from 5 to 30 months. So instead of getting 13 or 14 years, you'll get 10 years, which is what happened in my case. I received a 10-year federal prison sentence. And I had to do every day of that sentence at United States Penitentiary, such as, but not limited to, because I could potentially leave one out. United States Penitentiary, Canaan, one of the most horrible prisons you probably never heard of. Okay, U.S. Penitentiary, Victorville in California, and I'm from the East Coast. Yeah, they do things like that to you in the feds too, ship you 3,000 miles away from home. Couldn't care less. They don't care less one way or another. You know what I mean? Because it ain't their problem, it's your problem. United States Penitentiary, Terre Haute, and yeah, so they moved me around the country because what happened was I got a 10-year sentence, and because the feds were so moronic and just so ill-managed in any number of ways, like, they can take your privileges for like a year or two for a very minor rule violation, where you could stab somebody in the same prison and get 30 days loss of everything. And so it's not like the penalties, and it just depends on who gives you the hearing and what they want to do. There's no, like, you can't do but so much if you commit this type of offense, and so much punishment if you get, it's all over the board. There's no rhyme or reason, you know what I mean? Whereas in the state system, okay, you get in a fight, for example, a fist fight with another inmate. You could get 30 days, what they call keep lock, 30 days loss of all of your privileges. But they cannot recommend a loss of good time. Okay? So, yeah, you will get in trouble, go to the hole, you lose privileges. But after that 30 days, all your privileges are returned to you. Okay? And you didn't lose any good time, so there's still a good reason to behave. Okay, in the federal system, not only they're going to give you 3 or 4 times the amount of time, but you got to do 85%, even if everything goes great and you don't lose any good time. Now, nobody goes in and says, hey, I want to lose all my good time and do the maximum sentence. But when you get into the system, it just don't work out that way, because, see, the federal prison system, okay, is a very race-based system, very gang-orientated system. So when you get to a United States penitentiary and say you're a white guy, standard operating procedure of the prison administration. Now, I don't know if they have it in black and white. Probably not. They'd probably put some BS out there that they actually do. But what they actually do at the penitentiary level, you would never be put in a cell with a black dude. You're going to be put in a cell with another white dude. And let's just say all the white cells are full in that housing block that they assign you to. You can stay in a cell a day or 2 or 3 with a Mexican inmate. So you got white cells, black cells, and Mexican cells. And it's just like a kind of, it's cool. Like, or vice versa. If they put a Mexican guy in, and there is no Mexican cells available in that housing unit, because remember, every cell is a 2-man cell. So a lot of times there will be vacancies. So if a Mexican guy comes in, he just goes right into the cell with another Mexican guy. But in the rare instances where that's not available, but there's a white cell open with only one white guy in it, they will, routinely say, "Is this cool?" They'll even ask you, because, it just is what it is. That's the system. And because he's a Mexican, yeah, he can hang out in here a day or 3, okay, boom, boom, boom. And, then his people is going to go out of the way to get him a cell. You know what I mean? That's just the way it's done. Where in the state system, you don't have, New York State system, you don't have to deal with that, because if you're in a max joint, almost all the cells, with the exception of 5, are 1-man cells, okay? And then you come right off of the feeding line and you go in and sit in the next available seat. And in the feds, you go into the mess hall, man, you got people everywhere, going here, going there, getting up out of their seats, going and getting juiced and talking to their homie and doing wheels and deals, and you come off the serving line and then you walk over to, in my case, I'm a white guy, so I'd walk over to the white area and, sit down and eat. And so it's just kind of like chaos and confusion. You're not getting up out of your seat in New York State. Once you sit down, you stay sitting down, okay, until the officer directs you to get up, go turn your tray in, and leave. That's just what it is. Now, in the Fed system, it's just chaos and man. So all this leads to people wanting to know who they're eating across from, okay, or who they're selling with. So now, and then you have all these foul laws in the feds where, you could be looking at life, tell on all your friends, everybody you allegedly care about and you grew up with, and you can whittle that life sentence down to 2 or 3 years. So nobody wants to be sitting across the table from some rat. I ain't trying to sit across the table from some chomo rapist. It ain't happening, homie. You're out of here, okay? Now, it even gets deeper than that. What we consider, and that's just the way it is. I'm not eating across from a rat. I'm in a maximum security federal penitentiary on lost all of my privileges because of you little creepy crawly motherfuckers. Okay, I'm not eating across from one of them. And I'm not eating across, again, from a sex offender, somebody who's hurt a child or a woman. It just ain't going to happen. Now, where it even gets more insidious than that, in the federal system especially, on what they call the active, and I'm using specific words here, an active United States penitentiary yard, because they do have 1 or 2 of them for dropouts and ex-gang members because they can't live anywhere else. Okay? You're not going to live anywhere else. Now, with the BOP, let's say, and again, it's not about what I have a problem with, don't want to have a problem with. I'm just bringing the truth to you so you can be informed. So let's say you're a transgender person, all right? And you go to prison. The federal government arrests you for some criminal offense. And let's say you got 2 or 3 priors where you were locked up on Rikers Island or in a state system or whatever. And because of those priors and whatever alleged crime you allegedly accused of committing, you end up with, say, 8 or 10 years. And they decide to house you in a United States penitentiary. Well, if you're white or Mexican, okay, and they send you to, say, from New York City to USP Canaan. So, 9 times out of 10, it depends. If, like, SIS just wants some entertainment, they're called Special Investigative Services. They know you're going to have a problem when you go on that yard. The other white inmates are not going to allow you to stay on that yard. Or the other Mexican inmates are just not going to allow you to stay on that yard. And there's maybe a lot of ideas for that, but besides from that, it's just not going to allow it. So a lot of times they'll put you what they call in protective custody as soon as you come in, right? Because they know if you go on that yard, you're going to get beat up and ran off, okay? Now, a lot of people say, well, why don't they do something about it? But the question is, what can they do? Okay, the only thing they can really do at that level is keep you inside the perimeters of the prison. And if they decide to lock everybody down, wrestle everybody in their cells. That's really about the only 2 things they can really do, because see, there is no incentive to behave. You're doing 85% of your time. That's if you don't get in any trouble whatsoever. Now, when they send you to these United States penitentiaries, the thinking is that there is only room for warriors. There's no room for somebody who's trying to go home. There's no room for somebody who's trying to follow the rules. There's no room for somebody who's taking programs and is concerned about their family ties and all that, even though we all are. But there's just no room, because it's a cycle of constant chaos, politics, violence, and mayhem. And the way the federal system is designed, it facilitates that. From way back when they had Alcatraz and even federal prisons before that, it was all very segregated, and they realized early on what you do is you pit everybody fighting against each other, and then they don't have time to pay attention to who the real problem is, which is the administration who's keeping all of our asses and who's keeping everybody in prison. So you got everybody beefing with everybody. So if you are a transgender inmate of white or Hispanic descent, especially Mexicans, let me be specific here, Mexicans and whites specifically, right? Now, if they probably won't even send you to the yard, but if they do, they're setting you up for failure. Because first off, you're going to be assigned to a white cell, okay? And a white dude in that situation ain't going to let you go and live in nobody else's cell, because the thinking is white people handle their business, black people handle their business, and Mexican brown people handle their business, okay? So it turns into this political chaos where there's certain procedures. There's set procedures for things. You don't need somebody to tell you what to do. Like if you're in rec cage in the shoe, and they put you in the rec cage, and you're a white guy, I'm just going to use a white, white because I'm white, and I've dealt with this on a very personal, intimate level. And they put you in the rec cage with somebody who's a known rat, a known chomo, a known check-in. You are obligated to jump on them and beat them up. If you do not do it, you would then have a huge bullseye on your back, okay, from all the other white inmates in that jail and the white gangs in that jail. And once you're labeled no good, any white guy who comes across you is obligated to attack you and beat you up. And maybe not with a weapon, but at least just beat the hell out of them. And if you don't do it, then you will have a bullseye on your back. So what'll happen is, if you're a transgender inmate, it's possible you get to the yard, you don't know what's going on. You just came from MCC Manhattan or MDC Brooklyn or a county jail or wherever you come from into the federal prison system. So they're gonna put you on a plane or a bus or whatever and truck you hundreds of miles. You're gonna get there. You're gonna go through receiving this and that and the next thing. Where they book you into the facility. And there's a good chance, like, the security won't even put you out on the yard. But they'll say, hey, man, you're not going to make it out there. You're going to get beat up right away. Better off you just check in and just spare yourself a whole lot of pain and suffering. But if they don't tell you that, because sometimes they will set you up for failure. If you're a Chomo and you don't know this stuff, a lot of times they'll be like, oh, sure, you can go out to the yard. It's cool out there. Now, they know what's going to happen. So if a bus comes in today, everybody gets booked in. Tomorrow, when they open the cells at 6:30, by 7, when they do breakfast in the morning, they're going to probably hit the alarms because somebody's getting beat up. And it's probably going to be a white guy getting beat up by other white guys. He did something. At another jail or for his crime or whatever. But the Mexicans real good about that too. And the blacks, it's just that all the races have semi-different politics and different gangs and everything. So, even though it's somewhat similar, there is some significant differences also. So, like in New York, you don't have to really get to know another individual because it's a one-man cell. Okay, you don't have to worry about who's sitting across from you because it's just whoever the cop assigned to sit to that seat. You understand what I'm saying? So it takes away that need. Okay, now in New York, if you want to hang out, if you want to go to one of the tables in the yard or what they refer to as court sometimes, and you want to hang out and whatnot, well then the dudes, let's say you're from New York City or Manhattan, Brooklyn, you're gonna be some other dudes there from that general area, and that's gonna be kind of like your homies and this and that, people you deal with, and they gonna want to see. It's a requirement that they check your paperwork, your rap sheet, your sentencing commitment, this and that, next thing before you get officially cleared to hang out on the court, unless you've been in the system. So if you're just coming from Rikers, nobody really knows you. You get there, you meet a few people. They're like, hey man, you come hang out on the court if your paperwork's good. Now, if your paperwork ain't good, what's gonna happen? You'll be like, no, and then what they're gonna do is just shun you and not even deal with you no more, and not be there for you or not help you in any way. You're on your own, okay? But the reason for that is there's a lot of incentives. Okay, if you're not in the SHU, the whole special housing unit in New York, you can still smoke cigarettes outside. You can't smoke cigarettes in the hole. Okay, there's still weights in New York. There's a pretty good commissary. You can have a TV in your cell, hot pots in your cell. You can take meaningful academic programs, meaningful vocation programs. You have a conjugal visit program, or what they call a trailer program, where your wife can come and be with you for 24 hours inside the prison perimeter in a special area, or your immediate family, your mother, your father, your kids. You can get 48 hours. Now, see, the thing is, you have to earn that. All right, so you have to take their programs that they want you to take. You have to stay out of trouble, and if you do that, then you can earn all kind of extra incentives that like really facilitate you, like trying to chill and stay out of the way. See, in the feds, there's none of that. Okay, you don't have no smoking, you don't have no trailer visits, you don't have no waste. There's no incentive to behave whatsoever at all. Plus, you're gonna have a lot of time. 10 years as a decade. Let's don't minimize that. That was hard time, and I did about 7.5, 8 years of it with no privileges, as I explained in one of my prior videos. So the shit was it was real. Okay, now the prison administration in the federal penitentiary level, they know about what goes on. They allow it to go on because they can't really prevent it. And because what are you going to do to the guy? He already has 3 life sentences, no loss of prisoners for 90 years. He don't care about going to the hole. That's a part of doing business at the penitentiary level. There's no deterrent. Now, a lot of people say, well, just lock them down, keep them locked down. You know how much it costs to run a lockdown joint? You got to escort all these people to the shower. You got to deliver food 3 times a day. You got to escort all of them to recreation. That would be like billions of dollars to like run just one prison. And you got about 18, 20 penitentiaries now at the federal level, not including ADX, which is a federal penitentiary, but it's a unique one, you know. But it's still considered USP ADX, you know, United States Penitentiary ADX. AD stands for Administrative Detention. X stands for unknown, just as it does in mathematics. So when you go there, the amount of time you're going to be there is like unknown. It's going to be until they decide not to keep you there no more, or whatever they decide. You're in a bad situation when you get there. So what happened was the feds and state prosecutors looking to dump their problems in their state systems, people they can't control there. You know, they convinced the feds about 25, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, to start saying, hey, I bet if we indicted these guys at the federal level, we could really teach them a lesson. Now, the guy's already doing life or 2 life sentences in the state system, but the feds go for this because the U.S. prosecutor wants to have a big case to get his name in the paper, like this guy's doing in New York with, I still don't remember his name, the DA in New York. They want to have these big cases to get their names in the paper. So they decided to indict all these Aryan Brotherhood members and all these Texas Mafia members in the California state system, which is really where they're all, you know, those 2 organizations are from California. So they decide, hey, we're going to teach them a real lesson and indict them on the federal level and then send them to the federal penitentiary. And everybody championing this like it was like some fucking epiphany. It was a horrible idea because you just made them nationwide now. They were confined in the hole in their state prison, you know. So you indict them on the federal level, give them another life sentence or 2 at the federal level, then you send them into the federal system. So a lot of the old school AB dudes that ended up being locked down for 20, 30 years in the federal system, they weren't locked down in the beginning. They was just walking the yard with everybody else because, again, it costs a lot of money to operate ADX. You only got about less than 2,000 prisoners there. It costs them like $1 billion plus a year to operate it. You try to extend that to every prison, every federal penitentiary in the system, you're talking about billions, like $50 billion a year to run the federal BOP. Is this too much? They're not going to spend that kind of money when there's cheaper options. You know, so some people, yeah, they do lock down indefinitely or for a very long time, but most people, you're just in a regular United States chaotic penitentiary. So they import all these guys to the feds. Now, the consequence of that is that you ended up with a much more hardcore offender, and plus you already had people who was doing big things in the feds. You know, people go from state to state getting that money. People who do this and people who do that. That's whose federal FBI was designed back in the 20s to combat the interstate bank robbers. Rob a bank in this state, go to another state, that jurisdiction don't have jurisdiction to do nothing about it no more, or they can't go over there and get them. They don't have a warrant in that jurisdiction. So the FBI was designed, and federal law was designed to make national laws, and then have a national police force to enforce them. So that's who the FBI investigates. People now, it's done changed because now what happened is because of the state system, you need a lot more evidence to convict someone in a court of law. So the local precinct, a lot of times, they'll collect evidence on individuals, but they know, so they do the footwork. They get all the evidence, but they know they can't convict these individuals in state court. So what they'll do is it's really a state case, but the feds also passed all these gun laws and drug laws. More insanity on this war on poverty and this war on drugs were called in. You got to remember, a lot of people have a vested interest in keeping all this going. The DEA, certain other organizations within the federal government. People send their kids to college on the backs of a lot of the other people's kids to college, kids going to prison. You know, that was a big problem in New York State. And I remember, I think it was Spitzer said, hey, you know, he eventually had to resign his position because he couldn't keep his pecker in his pants. But he said, hey, if we need to create jobs for upstate New Yorkers, fine, let's do it. But let's don't create some jobs for some upstate New Yorkers and then lock some other New York City residents up to provide those jobs. You know, and so that's what you have now. You have a lot of people in the system who are parasitic. You know, they're parasites. They feed on other people's misery. So the local precinct to kick these cases over to the FBI. They done did all the work for them. So an agent, prosecutor will look at it. Okay, yeah, we can prosecute these cases in the feds because all we need is just like one or two little bitty witty kernels of truth, and that'll go light years in the feds where the state should have get dismissed. It's not sufficient evidence. So that's another reason why you don't want to cross paths with the feds, because they can literally indict a ham sandwich. They can convict a ham sandwich, and they can get that same ham sandwich 15 or 20 years in federal prison. And that's what we're all subject to and vulnerable to, whether if you realize it or not. So you created this system that nobody gives a fuck, okay? And you go to the federal penitentiary, nobody gives a fuck. You have all these kind of fucking laws and rules and this and that and the next thing, and this is what it is, and you will go along with it to a degree because you might be a big man in your hood or your town, your state, wherever you're from, okay? But when you get into the federal prison system, it's a whole nother world, and it's an established protocol, and everybody there is a monster, okay? Now you got the monsters that are only monsters in certain situations, and they're not really threatening to the general public, But then you have like the real demonic monsters that, they have these like convict armies who are going to go execute their orders, and that's just the way it is, So, yeah, so I bit that Chomos ear off, man, because they put this lame in the cell with me. And when we were locked down from like 3 o'clock to like 5 o'clock for the mid-evening count, afternoon count, whatever it is, we got to talking, man, and he's like, yeah, man. I was like, what? Because, see, now, I'm in a position where I got to get him, okay? Because if I don't get him, once we come out of lockdown and the other white dudes find out that he told me what he was in jail for in a locked cell and I didn't do nothing about it, now they're going to have a problem with me, okay? Again, there's only room for soldiers. I didn't come up with that rule. I'm not the one who coined that phrase. That phrase been coined for the last 100 years in the Federal Bureau of Prisons at the penitentiary level. Okay, so you can still do your own thing. You can have friends. You can, you're not, you don't have to walk in lockstep. But there's certain things that if you want to stay in your fellow, whatever your race is, their good graces, certain protocols you will have to follow. And if you don't follow them, you will end up with a bull's eye on your back for sure. Okay, so yeah, I mean, when he told me what he was in prison for, man, like I didn't even hesitate no more. I just grabbed him, pulled him to me, bit his ear off, pushed him, spit his ear in the fucking toilet, and flushed him. Okay, that's what I did. Fuck that guy. And then he started banging on the door. He's covered with blood. Cops come and all this other shit. I punched him a few more times. I figured I had done did him enough. Hey, I had no choice. If I hadn't did that and besides, I got no love for the creep no way. I mean, it was bad. It was a bad situation, man. And I got busted with 3 knives while I was in the federal penitentiary. Now I got busted. He gave me an incident report. Took some more privileges that was meaningless because I was only on all loss of privileges for 40 years. And I went to the hole for all these incidents. Bite the Chomos ear off. They put me in the hole. I did about 60 days in the hole there. But slept like a baby every night. Okay. And then I got busted through the course of that. About 9+ years I did on the jam. About 9.5 years all told. Maybe 9 years, 7, 8 months. Because, again, I'm not a model prisoner. You know what I'm saying? Like, I like to do things my way, you know what I mean? So maybe that's why I ended up in federal prison in the first place. Now, I will say on a side note, I am a total law-abiding citizen now. The federal penitentiary, they gave me 10 years in the feds, man, and when they opened those doors and allowed me to walk through those doors as a somewhat free man again, because once you get a felony conviction, you'll never have all your rights back. But somewhat as a free man again, that right there got me on the straight and narrow. I don't never want to cross paths with this motherfuckers again. It was hard time, man. It's hard time. I mean, I cannot emphasize that about it. It's a system that facilitates racism. It's a system, or what happens. So okay, let's say you're that transgender. So you go out to the yard. You're minding your own business. You ain't bothering nobody. but because of these standard protocols where no transgender white people are allowed to walk on that yard by prisoner rule, not by administration rule, you're probably going to get beat up. Man, it's sad, but it's the truth, man. I'm just going to tell you the truth. You know, you're probably going to get beat up just because you're transgender, not because you have a bad crime, not because you got told on nobody. Now, they might not try to really hurt you, but you're going to get beat up. You're going to, cops are going to come, you're going to go to the hole. Now, the feds, so what they're going to do is, in their infinite wisdom, they're going to send you to another yard that they know damn well you can't walk on. They know you can't walk on, okay? So if you're foolish enough to go to that yard, the same thing will happen to you again. You're not going to win because no matter how tough you think you are, they'll send like 5 guys with knives. You don't have a knife. It doesn't matter. And it's the same thing if they consider you a sex offender or a government informer. Any of those things, it's just like you have no wins because once they know who you are, if they look at you and say, okay, this person could be a serious threat or danger, they'll send 5 or 8 guys armed with motherfucking foot-long ice picks because they intend to do what the fuck they want done, you know? And they don't care about the consequences. You can't do nothing to them. They all got life sentences on loss of privileges for 40, 50 years. There's nothing else you can do. And they don't care about going to the hole. They'll attack you on camera. They'll just, and they want to do it because they want all the other inmates to see, this is how vicious my gang is. This is how vicious my race is. Now, if you go into the federal prison system, any race will tell you the white boys go the hardest. All right, because if you're not right, okay, if you don't follow the established prisoner protocol, okay, you're out of there. And I didn't come up with these rules. I didn't invent none of this shit. That's the way it was when I got there, and that's the way it was when I left. Now, hey, I did what I had to do, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, I'm cool. I ain't got a fucked up crime. I'm cool, you know what I'm saying? A lot of shit I saw I did not agree with. I don't have a problem with gay people. I don't. But that's the established prison protocol. You know, like I gay people in my family. I'm cool as fuck with. But when I was in federal prison, I've told them some of this stuff, and they was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. But it's the truth, you know. Well, let's say you go into the feds and you're a person of a biracial person. You know, your mother was one race, your father was another. Now you're here. You're human. You have a right to exist. You ain't really going to have nowhere to go or hang out. Let's say you're half white, half black. When you go into the federal prison system, all those white inmates are different varying levels of, well, they might not necessarily be any of the things they're proclaiming. When they're in federal prison, they're all like borderline neo-Nazis, white dudes with swastikas all over the place. They couldn't give a fuck less who likes it or don't. And they're walking around every day, and they all got knives, and they don't give a fuck neither. Okay, so when you go into the federal at the penitentiary level, the white race will be well represented, at least about maybe not 1/3, but you know at least close to 1/3 of the inmates in a federal penitentiary will be white. Okay, contrary to what you may hear on some other shows. I was never at the lower level security. I was never at a low or a federal correctional institution. I was in MCC Manhattan for a year. MDC Brooklyn for about 2 months to get designated. Next stop, USP Canaan. Rock and rolling coast to coast. Horrible place to be. I wouldn't recommend it for nobody. And so, yeah, the feds will just send you to another jail. Well, they know the same thing is going to happen. Then, if they want to fuck with you some more, they'll send you to another jail. And eventually they'll send you to what they call one of these USP special needs yards. And it's got every variety of everything, you know, sex offenders, transgenders, government informers, people who ran afoul with their gang politics. They're not really bad dudes, but for whatever reason, they end up on these yards. There's a lot of them guys. So it's like night and day between these. I think there's 2 or 3 of them type of joints in the federal system. But if you know all the rest of them, what they call active United States penitentiary yard, which means gang banging is rules a day. The federal prison can't really do too much, but just try to keep the inmates in the jail. That's about it. And it's just really chaos, you know what I'm saying? And so if you're a biracial person, you're not really I mean, you might be a great person, you know what I'm saying? But like, okay, you can't really hang out with the whites because all of them are like borderline neo-Nazis of one variant, or they claim to be, of one gang or varying degree of another. Okay, the blacks, because you admit like if your mom was white or whatever, like okay, you're cool, but you ain't really one of us. So you're like in this no man's land. That's just the way it is, man. I experienced this shit. I'm telling you the truth, man. For 9 fucking plus years now, and if you're a sex offender, like what happened to Whitey Bulger, that Irish guy. I mean, they knew exactly what was going to happen to him when they put him out in the yard. The guy was 90 plus years old. For all I know, he had dementia, or maybe he just wanted it to be over. I don't know. But, who knows? They could have got him to sign some papers. This guy was 90 years old, man. Who knows? He was in his right state of mind. And they pushed him out there. They let him go out there because they knew what was going to happen within the first hour or three. He's a well-known fucking snitch. Okay? And the white dudes is not going to allow him to walk there. And if he's fool enough to go out there, they're not going to just run him off. No, that's another thing. If you're white or Mexican, you're going to get fucked up. You ain't going to just have the fucking privilege of saying, hey, pal, get out of here. No, you're going to get fucked up. And if you're white and you run across somebody that's fucked up, and you have the obligation to fuck them up, and if you don't fuck them up to the degree that the other white prisoners think they ought to have been fucked up, they'll fuck your ass up. So you're in this fucking perpetual fucking chaos, man, of like, wow. Whoa, this is like, it's serious, man. It's the big leagues. I mean, there's no staying out of trouble. There's no, like I said, you could be your own man to a degree, but certain rules and procedures and shit, you are obligated to stand on them. And if you don't, you'll have fucking bullseye on your back, and the prison can't do nothing to protect you. People say, well, why don't you go and check into protective custody? Because once you do that, you are no longer considered a warrior by the other race, your fellow peers of your same race. Warriors don't check in. Warriors don't run up drug debts and not pay what they owe. Warriors stand no matter what comes at them. Okay? They never run. Now I'm not saying every warrior does that, but I'm saying this is the mantra that is preached. And if you don't go along with the program, you're out of here. Okay? And they don't give a fuck about nothing that the prison can do to them, because the prison can't do shit to them except lock them in a cell and bring them their fucking food and their medication. Fuck off, punk. That's the thing. You want to put me in the hole? Fuck you. You're the one who's got to take me to rec. I'm your problem. You're not my problem. I'm fucked either which way it goes. I'm your problem. You got to bring me my chow 3 times a day. You got to take me to rec, showers, nurse, medication. Fuck you. And so when you're dealing with people like that, and it's not just 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 or a couple hundred, it's the whole goddamn United States federal penitentiary system. Now you have camps. They're fluff. They're lightweight. That's where your doctors who wrote bad scripts and your insurance fraud motherfuckers go, who fucking write some bad scripts and shit. But they don't have no criminal history. They get 2 or 3 years in the fence, send their ass to a camp. 10 years or less. In between 20 years or less, you go to a federal low. It's really like a camp behind a fence. You're going to have 20 years maximum to be there, and you have a lot of sex offenders, the creeps that get busted with the images on their computers, or selling kid porn and all that type of shit, because they can't go to a camp. But they don't, because of their crime, they have laws prohibiting it. So they end up in what they call federal lows, Now you have a lot of the the white collar types there too. Maybe they got 1 or 2 prior convictions, but they're relatively nonviolent, no major criminal history. Then you have federal correctional institutions. Now, I would say about 20% of those federal correctional institutions are pretty tough, rough places. The others are places you can more or less stay out of trouble, You got, but again, you got about 20% of what they call federal correctional institutions that are pretty tough places, relatively political, and if they ain't feeling you, they'll beat you up and run you off too. But that is not as prolific as at the penitentiary level. they got serious hardcore protocol, man. And if you don't make the cut, your ass is out of there, man. And I can't, most people out here in this world wouldn't even imagine this shit is going on, okay? You wouldn't even know this shit is real, and that your own government, who talks out of both sides of their mouths, allows this shit to happen. But they've created a system where there is no incentive for people to behave or follow the rules. And when you create a system like that, now, these are the same people that want to have more control over your life. And let me tell you something, all you socialists, you're entitled to your points of view, but let me tell you something, the last thing you want is these fucking morons having control over your fucking life. Now, I don't equate national health care as socialism. Hey, we fucking live in one of the goddamn richest nations in the world. We're supposed to have fucking national health care where every citizen can go to a dentist. Every citizen can get basic medical procedures covered. They claim they got that shit. That shit ain't up and running everywhere. New York's got a pretty good overall health care for New York State. Down here in Florida, where I live, they don't have nothing for dental or none of that shit. You know what I mean? So, we live in the, we got to make sure Jeff Bezos makes another $10 billion this year. Or, we can't use that money on helping homeless people in the street or helping, people get, fucking their teeth fixed so they can go get a job. We can't be concerned with that. We got to spend billions of dollars on wars that personally I don't give a fuck about. I hope everything works out for Taiwan, and I hope everything works out for fucking Ukraine too. Personally speaking, couldn't give a fuck less. I care about me, my country, my town, my neighborhood, what's going on here. And anything that's going to fuck the flow of that up, you can keep it, pal. Okay, we start beefing with fucking China, all them fucking containers. First of all, Taiwan will be blown to fucking pieces. So, even getting into that beef is futile, because one of the definite casualties of that war will be the island of fucking Taiwan. China will blow that motherfucker into the goddamn Stone Age. It will cease to exist. That's number one, right off the bat. And number two, I don't think that all our resources that could be better spent here at home should be spent on Taiwan. We should be spending that money here. Now, I hope everything works out for Taiwan, but it ain't my problem. It ain't one way or another. Same way with Ukraine. I hope everything works out for them. More power to them. I ain't going to take a position one way or another because I don't give a fuck. What I care about is my people here at home. That's what I care about. So, like I said, it's hard for me to pin down one subject here at A Word for the Shadows that I want to concentrate on, because I have opinions about all kind of shit, and I'm sure you guys have opinions of all kind of shit. And I really want to bring you thought-provoking material that maybe tunes you into something you didn't really know was happening before, or maybe you knew it was happening but you didn't know to what degree. I mean, hey, we should come up with a flag for, like, and not an American flag, a flag for people here in their country, our country, that care about what's going on here, man. Homeless people, animals that need rescuing, and just being a cool fucking person instead of some social warrior lame that puts a fucking flag by your name and you don't even know what that place is all about. It's well known that Ukraine was full of fucking Nazis. Our own Congress and Senate said we're not going to give them no money whatsoever because it's a bunch of fucking Nazis. And now all of a sudden they're the wherewithal end all because you got a bunch of people who allow themselves to be used as wind-up dolls for the moronic politicians on Capitol Hill, and those politicians say something, then they have to walk in lockstep. Nah, man, I practice common sense. And these videos, man, I do this shit because I want to do it. I got a job. I do this because I want to do it. In some videos, I don't cuss. Some videos, I do this. Some videos, this is what I'm doing in this video. So, right now, I'm going to have a carcinogenic but I'm an adult. I can do that. Hey, if you don't like it, that's your problem, not mine. I'm in my living room. You're in your living room or wherever the fuck you at. So, I guess I done said all I need to say for today. One more thing. You're better off being a law-abiding citizen. That's what I am. But, if you can't be good, You damn sure better be good at it, pal. Until next time, this has been your dude Mick, and this has been a word from the shadows.